All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Rose Ballantine. It's May 5th, 2025. We're at Alexana Winery in Dundee. Rose, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
First question, as you probably know, is why wine?
It's a tricky one. I grew up in Napa, California, born and raised, but my parents and sort of my life didn't start in wine by any means. I sort of joke that my entire career feels like a series of like happy accidents. Looking back at it now, it's awesome that I grew up in Napa Valley, and I'm incredibly grateful that like that's where I get to call home. And it's, you know, an iconic wine region, and I grew up around amazing winemakers and amazing people, vineyards. I never thought of it that way when I was little, especially like the teenage years. You know, I probably thought all of my parents' friends were like boring old people, and I don't really realize, and now looking back at it, I can't believe I would say that. Some of them are people I actually like work with and interact with now in a professional way, so it's really funny that I know them in a very different light. But yeah, I mean, growing up there, I loved being outside, loved being in vineyards, but didn't know that wine was even a job that you could have. My parents, they're from the Midwest, but moved out to California in the 80s. My dad coached and played tennis, and my mom was in grad school, but then did sort of marriage and family therapy and then counseling, and they kind of ended up there also by accident in a way. They now, I mean, have been there over 30 years, and it's their home. They're never going to leave. They love it. Hard to complain. I mean, it's like 70 and sunny most of the time, so, you know. But they, same thing, like just kind of fell in love with it, but wine was never part of like their story of how they ended up there. I was really good at math and science in school, and kind of, I don't want to say like everybody, but like a lot of kids, I was smart and good at those things. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to college and like be a doctor, because that's what you do and you're good at that, I guess. And like I went to UC Davis. I also went and played water polo there. But my first few years of school really were just like, you know, all the basic bio, chem, math classes that you're in, classes of, you know, 700 kids. And it's everybody from people that are doing viticulture and enology, but also pre-med students and kind of like everything in between. Toward the end of my second year, where you start like actually taking your real upper division classes, where you're like learning the thing you care about. I was in a physiology class with my best friend from college, who also played water polo with me. It's important to the story, so I'll explain her a bit. She's a third generation doctor now. Incredibly successful. She's like the smartest person that I know, and I love her. She's great. But we're sitting in this class together, and she's talking about like how interesting it was, how much she loved it. She was like, I'm so excited that this is like what I want to do for a career. And I'm sitting there next to her like, oh no. I was like, this was the most boring lecture of my life. Like, I don't like this. This is not fun. Like, what am I doing? And later that day, she was like, you know, I don't know if you realize this. She was like, because you like gotten pretty lucky by like being smart, and, you know, you like got into a good school and whatever. And she's like, but like med school is really hard. And she's like, and if you don't want to be a doctor and you don't like it, you should probably not do that. And I was like, you are so right. So the next semester then I took like 5 different classes in like 5 really different disciplines, I guess you would say, just kind of hoping that something was going to stick. Because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I liked science a lot. I was also taking Spanish classes. Spanish is my first language. So I was kind of doing that also just to like have reasons to speak Spanish pretty much. And was kind of like in a variety of things anyway. But I took a pharmaceutical chemistry class. I took botany, I took English, I took a psychology class, and then I was going to take, it was like an agricultural development class. That was basically a class where you just like drive tractors. And the class was full. So I ended up having to like find something else last minute. And one of my friends was like, oh, I'm taking intro to winemaking. Like, you grew up in Napa, it'll be like an easy A, you should just take that. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that that was like a class. Like, what even is that? And she was like, apparently there's like a lot of chemistry. And I was like, really? For making wine? Which is just so funny to like think about that now. But I was like, oh, okay, sure, whatever. And it like fit in like the time slot of the rest of my schedule. So I was like, great, I'll do that. All of the other classes, didn't like them. Like, English is cool. I love reading. I love literature. But I was like, what am I going to do? Like, teach English for the rest of my life? Like, that's probably not something I want to do. Chemistry, I was like, oh, I'll spend the rest of my life in a lab. Like, I don't want to do that either. Psychology, I was like, well, my mom did that. Like, I don't exactly want to just do the same thing that my mom did either. So it's kind of like all the things didn't really feel like they stuck. As much as they were like interesting and I love to learn, and that's like, I think why I bounced around so much was because just learning new things was fun. None of them felt like the right thing that I like wanted to do. And not that anyone knows what they want to do forever when they're like 19, but I definitely didn't know what I wanted to do forever at 19. An important piece I should also note, I changed my major 13 times while I was at Davis, which is, I actually don't even know if that's allowed anymore. Like, I'm pretty sure the academic advisors would like prohibit you from doing that. I still graduated in 4 years, which is surprising, but I did change my major many, many times because I was really indecisive. And it was like every time I got an idea of like, oh, this would be a really fun career, I would change it, and then I would hate it, and then I would change to something else. And I just did that over and over and over again. But yeah, so intro to winemaking, like within the first week of lecture, I was like, this is so cool. I did not know that this was a job. Like, this is something like people do. And I remember I was like, I called my parents on like one weekend, because I usually would like call them on Sundays. And I was telling them about this class, and my mom goes, oh, well, like a lot of our friends are winemakers. She was like, haven't you ever like asked them what they do? And I was like, no. I was like, those are your friends. Like, I don't ask them what they do for work. And she was like, oh, well, one of my parents, like their best friends is the Lindy Novak, which is the Novak family of like Spotswood in Napa. And we like grew up hanging out with them. Like, my dad played tennis with her husband. And in my mind, those were just like my parents' friends. And I've always known that they were like at every like family party and whatever, but I didn't know, like I knew they did something with like a winery, but I had no idea what actually any of them did. And she was like, oh, well, you should like ask Lindy about it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I could. And she was like, also, like, our neighbor is the vineyard manager for Joseph Phelps. And I was like, no, he's not. And she was like, yes, he is. And I was like, really? And she starts just like naming off all these people. And I was like, she's like, they've been doing this your whole life. You've just like never paid attention. And I was like, oh, geez, okay. But it kind of throughout like the semester, learning about it for one was like really interesting. And it kind of just like fit and made sense. And it like made sense to my brain in a way that was like, this is really cool. This is like something that I get to use all of these things that I really like. Like, I get to use biology, I get to use chemistry, I get to use language and travel and all of those pieces, but I'm making something. And it's something that's like, I mean, as you can tell by me being slightly indecisive, right? It's like something that changes constantly. Like, the wine industry is not stagnant, right? Every vintage is different, every wine region is different, every grape is different, every wine is different. So it's almost like impossible to get bored, which I think for me was like a big part of it, that I was like, I felt like a person that once I learned how to do the thing, I was kind of like done and ready for the next thing. So it was like finding something where I wouldn't get bored of what I was doing every day, and that I liked doing it so it didn't feel like work. My parents both like worked my whole childhood, but my mom especially like loved her job. I mean, my mom worked till she was like 60. She worked past 65 because she retired and then went back because she missed working. But like loved her job so much that she like didn't even necessarily want to retire. So like I sort of grew up thinking that like that's like what you're supposed to find, is like, it's cheesy or whatever, but if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. But like very much that was something that I was like raised to, like that was the pinnacle of success. Like not necessarily about making money or whatever, but like finding something that you really, really love to do, and then like going at it 110% so that you like, that's where your effort and your energy like goes into. And it was that way with like sports and school and academics and stuff like that growing up, but that was kind of like what I wanted to find. I, toward the end of the semester, like talked with my professor who, he was a like older French man who was probably like 5 feet tall, absolutely adorable. He's so cute. He is retired now from the department, but I like went up and was like, hey, like, you know, I really loved taking your class. I think that I want to like transfer, like change my major and like do this. And he was like, okay, well, you know, like the department's full. And I was like, okay. And he's like, so you're going to have to like petition and like try really hard to like do this. So you have to be like sure that this is something that you want to do. And I was like, okay. And he was like, why don't you like come to my office? We'll sit down. We can like look through. And I did, and like the next week I'm sitting down with him, and the first thing he does is he like looks at how I had changed my major 13 times, and he was like, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how people are gonna feel about this for you. And I was like, I know it doesn't look great, but trust me. I was like, I do really want to do this, I promise. And he was like, how many times have you said that to somebody though? And I was like, okay, again, I totally hear you, but so I ended up having to like write an entire academic plan for like the rest of school to like prove that I could actually graduate in 4 years. I had to have like a certain GPA in all my classes. I had to like write a letter and have like all different professors like sign off on it and like approve me going into the program. And even then, one of the professors was like, okay, this is all great and like this is awesome that you want to do this. And she's like, but I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Like, if you don't like this, she's like, one, you'll have kind of like screwed yourself a bit that you won't, what are you supposed to do with this degree if you're not going to work in wine? She's like, so it's not exactly like well applicable to a bunch of things. And she's like, and two, like you could study whatever, do all the things, really love it, like go and start working and you like hate the actual work. And she's like, so what I think you should do is, she's like, you're from Napa, like go home this summer, find a winery to hire you and like go and work for them. She's like, do it for free if like they won't hire you or something. She's like, find a job, actually work, like step foot in a winery and genuinely see how you feel about it before you spend the next couple years doing this. Cause she's like, it is really hard. She's like, I know that you're smart. I know that you're good at, you know, science and all of those things. And she's like, but it's like practical application of chemistry for wine is not easy. And she's like, in the same way that, you know, all of that, like you have, it is hard. And which was really good advice. I think sort of another like common thread to a lot of my career has been, I've had a lot of, I would call them mentors, I guess, but mentors that have given me like really, really important key pieces of advice at like transitional points in my career that have made the way that I made decisions like it like turned out a certain way. So I like went home that summer, reached out to basically like all of our family friends because I couldn't do like an actual harvest like in the fall because I had to be back for school. That was like mid-October was when Davis started. So I couldn't do like the full harvest. So nowhere like officially wanted to hire me because they were like, no, like our window is August to November. And they were like, we don't want to, and also like I had no experience and all of those things. So they were like, no, why are we going to give you like a special privilege to only work here for like 4 weeks? Like, why would we do that? So I like reached out to basically all of my family friends and was like, I will literally work for free. I'll do anything you want. Like, please let me come and work for you. And a girl who I grew up with, like swimming my whole life, her family has a winery that's off of like Big Ranch Road in Napa called Monticello Vineyards. And they had never had an intern before. They like never had a harvest intern. Her dad was like, I mean, he's like, I've known you since you were like 7. And he's like, so just for that alone, he's like, I know that you work hard. So he's like, yeah, like we'll hire you. He's like, I have no idea what we're going to have you do because like this is new to us too, but like we'll figure it out. And I basically like went to the winery. He was so it's a small like family operation. And the three brothers sort of like controlled different parts of the business. So his brother was the winemaker. He did sort of like vineyards, and I think he might have also been like this like CEO or CFO or something. He did kind of like operational stuff. But he was like, okay, like we'll go and we'll talk to Chris, we'll like talk to the winemaking team, whatever. And they, at the time, their enologist was about to go on maternity leave. So they were like, okay, well, you'll spend the summer with her before she's gone. And then you'll stay as long as we can have you, basically till you have to go to school. And you're primarily going to do lab related stuff, which based on my experience made sense too, because I'd spent a lot of time in labs because of school. Which was kind of a nice intro into wine, I guess, because it was familiar in the sense that like lab analytical side of things is like what I was good at, but I was doing it in the context of wine, which was cool. So that was 2017, and that was my first, I guess, like harvest with them, which was really fun. It was like a crazy learning experience just in wine in general. It was sort of funny, like toward the tail end of harvest, there was like a day we were like all drinking wine at the end of work or something. And I like made some comment about how I had like celebrated my birthday during the middle of like the time being together. And they were like, why didn't you say anything? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like I was new. I didn't want to like whatever. And they were like, how old are you? And I was like 19. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you've been drinking wine with us this entire time. I was like, well, you never asked how old I was. And they were like, Rose, what are you? And I was like, sorry, which is funny looking back at it now. And they just like laughed and they were like, oh my God. But most of that job was kind of, I was pretty like independent. It was kind of just like me going around and sampling and running lab analysis on stuff. It was like going around and doing stuff with fermenters during harvest. But it was really fun. It was like fun to, like in every sense of the word, it was like learning by doing, where they were also figuring out like what to even have an intern do and like what my role even was, because they didn't really know either. So it was kind of just like all of us figuring this out together. I learned a lot also just about like the dynamics of small wineries. I mean, it was like a bootstrap budget in like every possible way, right? Like we had a little like aquarium fish pump that ran our like AO sulfur meter that like broke at one point. And I like literally went to Petco to like buy another one. And I was like, this is how you like make wine in Napa Valley? Like I go to Petco to buy and it was like things like that, which was just like, what? But I thought that like, I'm a pretty resourceful person. My dad is like super handy, where it's like those sort of things I actually like loved that was like the reality, that it's like, yeah, I mean, Romans made wine like a bajillion years ago. So like, of course we don't actually need all of the technology to do this. And it's like funny that they were like somewhere in between. I like broke one of our hydrometers because we used a hydrometer for bricks. We didn't have like an actual DMA. And I broke one of our hydrometers once. And I remember they weren't like mad at me, but they were just like, do you know how much these are? And I was like, no. And they told me, and I was like, it's this expensive for this like little piece of glass? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And they were like, no, it's fine. They were like, it's like a hazard of the job, like using hydrometers, they're super fragile. And they're like, but just like be careful. And I was like, oh my God. But that was like really fun, just sort of seeing even like the family dynamics of how like the brothers all would like talk to each other and interact with each other. Like a small team. I mean, they had 4 full-time like staff on their like production side of things. And it was like an old cellar and an old barn. And it was like the guys would like, all the barrels were on stillage, and the guys would like lift these barrels like 4 high together, like up onto these like stillage racks. And just like watching the way they did things was like fascinating. So I was with them all of harvest, which was cool. Went back to school in the fall, started actually taking all the like winemaking classes. And the fall is like your hardest like semester at Davis, because it's like your wine production, it's lab analysis, you have to do all the vineyard stuff. So like grape morphology and where you go out and literally one of your classes is like you walk through a vineyard and you have to tell them what grape it is, just based on like leaves, right? Which is, I don't know that I could do that super successfully now. I'd like to think I could get like a couple right, but some of them were like, but it was like just a crazy learning curve where it felt like I went from like 0 to 100. But it was so fun. Like the program is really, really small at Davis, in kind of the best way, where everybody like really did get to know each other, and we all like had to work and collaborate together, because that's kind of the only way that you all learn and figure it out. Like I remember on weekends we would like go out to like the student vineyard, and it would be like a bunch of us like just out there looking at leaves and like studying together. We would like pick leaves and put them in like Ziploc bags so that they wouldn't get brown, so that we could like study. And I remember there was a day we're at a water polo tournament, and I literally like pulled this like bag of leaves out of my bag, and all of my like teammates, they turn and look at me and they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm studying. I was like, I have a test on Monday. And they're like, that's a leaf. Like, what? And I was like, no, it's a grape leaf. And I was like, look. And I like started explaining it to them, and they're like, that's what, okay. Like, what are you doing? Like, how is this a real like job? And I was like, I promise, it's a real thing. Which was really funny. And it was funny, like my friends, my like closest friends at school, I had the one who was pre-med, but my other two like best friends, one of them was an engineer, and then the other one, she's now a therapist, but was in psychology. So like very different disciplines. So when the four of us were studying together, it was like, could not have been more different things that we were talking about. Like one of them, she's like reading the DSM-5, and then one is like doing God knows what coding on her computer that I will never understand. And the other one's like using me as like her study guide for like physiology things, and then I'm like looking at leaves or like drinking wine, I guess, or like whatever weird things I was studying, where it's just like so funny the breadth of differences of like what we studied. But went back, did that sort of for the whole year. A funny part of the story, which I probably shouldn't advertise, but I find hilarious, is I actually failed my first winemaking test, which I promise is not because I'm an idiot, but my brother got married in the fall of 2018, or 2017, sorry, and his wedding was the weekend before my like first midterm, and this class was like midterm final, and that was it. And I was like flying back from, he got married in Michigan, and I was flying back and then was late. My flight got delayed, so I was late to my midterm. I also got a parking ticket because I like came straight from the airport and like parked illegally. I was like running into the building, still was late, didn't finish the test, and like failed, obviously, because I didn't even answer all the questions. And I remember like the next Monday when we all like get our tests back, our professor, she's like addressing the room, and it was like the sort of thing where, you know, like someone makes a blanket statement, but they're like staring at you, and you know that like everything out of their mouth is like, oh my God, they're talking about me. And literally she's explaining to the whole room, she goes, okay, so like, you know, this is a really good indication for all of you of like what the next couple years are going to be like. She's like, this is literally like winemaking 101. Like if you don't get this now, it's only going to get worse from here. So she's like, so anybody that got less than this score, like you're going to have to try really hard. She's like, if you got less than this score, I'm going to be honest, you should probably rethink what you're doing. And she's like, and if you got less than this score, you can try to come to my office, or you should just leave. And I was like sitting there like, oh no. I was like, I know that I did not answer all of these questions. And I know that I'm one of these people that she's talking about for sure. Sure enough, we like get the test back. She like didn't even make eye contact with me, just sort of like put it on the desk. And I was like, oh God. I literally walked out into the hallway and looked at it and was like, oh, no. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? I like went and talked to our TA, and I was like, okay, so, and I'm like explaining to her how I was like, I did like study. I studied all weekend. I was like, but I just like didn't finish the test. Like, and she goes, I'm going to be honest with you. She's like, she doesn't care. She does not care what your excuse is. She's like, from her point of view, like, doesn't matter what the excuses are. Like, you should have like known or passed or whatever it is, right? And she was like, so don't go into her office and like try to give her excuses for like why you failed. She's like, it's not gonna work. And I was like, okay. And she was like, you are gonna have to like try really, really hard, because she's like, because you like failed this, she's like, the only way that you can get an A in this class now is if you get the highest grade on the final, because it's like a curve system at Davis. And she's like, so unless you get a perfect score or better than everybody else, she's like, I mean, maybe you'll get like a B or a C or something. And she's like, but that's like kind of your only chance. And I was like, okay. And she was like, you seem fine with that. And I was like, I think so. I was like, I can do that. And she was like, okay. And I like literally went to office hours with her like every single week. She was probably so annoyed with me by the end of the quarter. She was like, okay, you can go study by yourself. And I was like, no. Our professor, I tried to talk to her after class one day. She did not want to talk to me. And I was sort of just like, okay, you know what? There's nothing that I can say that's going to like make you think any differently, other than if I like sort of like prove you wrong and like do well. And I get it. Like from her point of view, like I was very indecisive and had like changed my major a bunch of times, and then was like some kid from Napa that showed up and like didn't try that hard and then like failed her test and whatever. And she's like, who do you think that you are? Like, that's not how this works. You have to like actually try and want to be here. So I understand where she was coming from. I ended up doing very well in her class and figured it out at the end of the semester, which was great. And I got an A in her class, which I'm very proud of. And we talked about it like after the fact. And it's funny, like we've joked about it a lot now. But she was like, yeah, she's told me all of these things. She's like, I thought that you were like spoiled and entitled and that you like thought that you knew everything and whatever. And I was like, honestly, I maybe probably did. Like, that's probably not a horrible read. Like, I was pretty smart in high school. I got into most colleges. I sort of did naturally just from like being intelligent, but not necessarily having to like work really hard to do it. And I was like, but it was a good lesson for me. I was like, if you had been nice to me, I don't know that I would have tried as hard as like you just sort of being pretty blunt, which is funny now. Like, I have a pretty good relationship with her, and I'll like, you know, reach out and let her know what I'm doing and like stay in touch with her as best as I can. And like when I graduated, even like she was like so excited and, you know, like proud of me and whatever. And I even brought up, I was like, do you remember how much you hated me when we first met? And she was like, yeah. She was like, I was not a fan. And I was like, yeah, I failed that one test in your class. And she's like, oh, I still remember. And I was like, I'm sure that you do. But that was like another one of those like moments of like something that was like really good for like, I tell that story to some people and they're like, oh my God, that's so mean that she like basically told you to like quit and give up. And I was like, well, actually, like she's right though, because it's in every way, like the wine industry isn't easy. And like her being tough on me that way was actually really helpful. Because now like there's been a lot of moments of like, things aren't easy and I've had to like work and try really, really hard to like make things happen for myself, or like learn how to do something that I don't know how to do. And like had from the start somebody not been like very clear about like, this is hard, and if you're not gonna like try and show up, it's not gonna work for you. Like I might have just kind of like skated by, like not actually working that hard for it. So I think that was like really good and like a good reality check for me. And now I just look back at it as like something funny. That like I told Tress that story and he laughed and he was like, you failed one of your winemaking classes? And I was like, does it make you feel differently about hiring me? And he's like, well, it's just funny now. And he's like, because you're smart, but he's like, I would never have guessed that you like failed a class. And I was like, yeah, I know. Which I didn't fail the class, I just failed the test. Don't worry. But yeah, so like finished out the rest of the year. And then I wanted to study abroad for one of my years of school. And wanted to go to a Spanish speaking country. So I ended up going to Argentina. And it was like half of my classes were like winemaking and wine related, and the other half were just like Spanish and Spanish language, Spanish culture. So I studied at the, it's UN Cuyo, but the university that's in Mendoza. And it's kind of their like winemaking school too. And it was really cool. Like one of my classes was like the history of wine in Argentina. But because I was going to do that, I like similarly had to find like a harvest job for the summer that was going to let me like go for the summer and then leave early, because I was going to like travel for a bit before like actually starting class. And so I ended up going back to Monticello again in 2018, which was fun because when I came back, their enologist was back. And that time I sort of was like more in the cellar than I had been before. So I was actually like doing the cellar jobs with the rest of the team. We had like a huge bottling run in the middle of the summer. They did a lot of like custom crush stuff. So I got to like kind of interact with clients and do more of like the operations for like the custom crush side of things, which was really interesting to see just like that as a business model that exists. But then we went to Argentina in sort of summer, fall of 18. And I was there for a long time. And it was great, like loved school. It was funny, I literally got off the plane, my host mom like picked me up at the airport and we're like talking on the way home. And despite the fact that I'm talking to you guys a lot now, I'm actually pretty introverted. And when I like open up to people, I'm definitely more talkative, but like at first it takes a while for me to warm up. So I was like pretty quiet most of the drive. And at one point she turns to me and she was like, "They told me that you spoke Spanish. Like, is there a reason you're not talking?" And I was like, "No, I'm just like quiet. I don't know." And she had been, a like Spanish professor. So her like diction, everything was like spot on. So she would criticize the way that I spoke so much, which was good because my vocabulary got a lot better. But it was funny. She like in every way was just like classic like Latina woman, where it was just like, she did not hold back on the things that she would say, which was hilarious and was like really funny living with her. And like she was a widow, and it was just me and her at the house. So it was like I would come back from school, I would like do whatever with friends or like do homework, and we would have dinner at like 9 p.m. every single night, like in very classic Argentina way. And we would go to bed so late, but then I had class at like 7 in the morning. So I feel like I just barely slept like the entire time I was there. I remember there was like a day she went out with like a bunch of her friends, and she was like, what are you doing? It's a Friday night, whatever. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm just going to stay home, like watch movies. And she was like, that's not a thing that people do here. Like, she's like, you have to like go out and be social. And I was like, I'm not like a go out and be social kind of person. And she was like, we're going to have to work on that. And I was like, okay. She's like, do you want to come out with me and my friends? And I was like, respectfully, no. I was like, love you, but like, I don't need to go and hang out with you and you're like 60-year-old friends. That's going to make me feel really bad about myself, and I don't need to do that. And it was she was so funny. But that was like such a fun experience being there. I mean, Argentina is amazing. It's an amazing country, but like fantastic people, and like got to travel, see so many different like parts of that country as a whole, but also just like I spoke Spanish my whole life, but I think using it like as an adult was different for me, where I had never really done that. Like a lot of my basis of Spanish is very much like from childhood, where it's even funny, like I don't really know how to like swear in Spanish. And when I try, it like sounds really unnatural. And like Spanish speakers will like laugh at me because they're like, it just sounds so forced, like what you're trying to say. And it's because it is, like I didn't use curse words like growing up. And then like when I was swearing was like high school, and most of my friends were like speaking English. So like I didn't really learn how to do that in Spanish. So when I try, it just like sounds wrong. Or there's like certain things that I like don't really know how to talk about in Spanish because it just doesn't feel right. So it was kind of fun being part of those like your like 20s, like formative years as like an adult in a Spanish speaking country was like cool for me. But getting to like learn about the Argentina wine industry, and like for them, like wine is so much a part of their culture. Not that it isn't here, but it's very different there. It's like there is wine at every single meal that you're having, like no matter what. And it is like, especially like Mendoza was like, all of it is built on the wine industry. Like everybody in that region and around there, it's like that's how they lived. Like they're all farmers. It's like glorified farming is basically what the city is at this point, which is similar to Napa in a lot of ways, just like probably like 10 years behind in terms of like technology and whatever. But that was so fun being there. I really loved it. I was like really, really sad to leave, which I'll come back to because it's a very important part of my life and my job now, that I didn't have to like fully say bye to it, which is great. Came back, finished Davis, graduated in 2019 fall. I worked at Sainsbury in Carneros, which is sort of funny. I had actually like applied to work with them in 2017 and 2018, and they were one of the people that was like if you're gonna leave early, like we can't like hire you, like we only hire like 2 interns. Like if you're gonna leave early, like we're gonna lose, like we can't do that. But I really liked their winemaker, their entire like they're mostly Pinot Noir, but some Chard, like they don't do Pinot, they do like a little bit of Chenin. They've started playing around with like a couple cool varietals now. But it's mostly Pinot, and it's mostly Pinot from like single vineyard sites around California. So it's just like different expressions of that as a grape, which I thought was really cool. And a really cool like approach to winemaking was like really letting almost like the grape be like a blank slate for like where it was coming from, right? Which like you hear about in winemaking and everybody says that, but like to actually do it, I was like, great, like that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do. Their winemaker, he and I like got along really well. I just really liked his energy in general. So I was like, I really wanted to work with him. But figured it out in 19 to like actually go and work there, which was funny because when I like showed up, he was like, I feel like we've interviewed like 4 times already and it's just like never worked out. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he was great. It was so much fun working harvest with them, like they're in Carneros. So sort of like not the like Napa of like the cab world, but still being like Napa adjacent was kind of like, Carneros is almost like its cool own little like perfect pocket, which was really fun. Their cellar master, still like to this day, probably like the best forklift driver I've ever seen. Just everything in general, like he is like one of those cellar masters that you like hear about or whatever, where it's like the institution where there's nothing he cannot do like perfectly in that building. And like realistically, like their wine is made because he is like logistically amazing at doing stuff. Like it was really cool. He could put like quarters on the ground and with the forklift like flip them, and he would like flip the quarters and then catch them on the forklift forks. I have videos of this. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. But just like everything about him in general, like amazing. But he was also like really hard to work for because he had really high expectations of like, this is how we do things here. This is how I do things. Like, that's it. Even just something as simple as like clamps. Like, this is how you put a triclover clamp on a valve, and it's this way every single time. And it was like, you couldn't do it the other direction. If you did, he would like walk up and be like, who did this? Because it's backwards. But it was like those procedures, that was also like a very good and helpful point of like, there's reasons why we do it this way every time. And this is why we do it like this. And it was like, this clamp goes this direction and this one is this direction so that you don't unhook the wrong one and take the entire valve off the tank and then all the wine falls out. But just like things like that he did. It was fun. It was like a small team. So I got to interact with Tim, their winemaker, a lot and just like talk to him about winemaking and talk to him about why he did the things that he did, why he liked it, what he liked about his job. With most of my bosses, actually I think all of my bosses, I'm a pretty like curious person that likes to learn, but I've asked everybody like, do you like your job and why? And I remember when I asked Tim that, he like laughed at me. He's like, I don't know if I've ever had someone ask that before. And I was like, well, it's a valid question. Like, do you like your job? And it's really funny to like gauge what people will tell you when you ask them that. And like the people that don't, it's like, okay, well, why? Or like, if you do, why? Like either way, it's still interesting. I think all experiences, whether it's work, jobs, whatever, you learn a lot, whether it's good or bad. Like you can learn as much from, and sometimes even more, from like your failures or mistakes or like a negative experience. You can learn just as much from that as you can like a positive one. So I think it's like even the things that maybe weren't my favorite or like places I wouldn't go back to or things I wouldn't do again, I still learned a lot from that. Or I at least learned like, okay, this is like a type of wine I don't want to make again, or this is like a type of winery I don't want to work for, this is like a person I don't work well with. Like those were still helpful things to figure out like the conditions that like I work best in. But getting to talk with Tim just about winemaking was really cool. And like similarly, like I also have a story with him where like there was a day toward the tail end of harvest where I was sort of like figuring out like what I was going to do next with like life and whatever. And he was like, my one thing is, he's like, I never like made wine abroad. He was like, I didn't travel. Like he was like, I came to Napa and I kind of worked my way up and eventually ended up here. And he's like, and now I'm the winemaker and I like love that and I like love my life and I wouldn't change it. And he's like, but if I was going to do something different or do it over again, he's like, I wish I would have like traveled and made wine abroad. And he's like, and also, like the diversity of experience, like he's like, if I was hiring somebody to like replace me or even like as an assistant winemaker or something, he's like, I would want someone that like has done things that I haven't done, because like that's the missing piece of like my team or like my experience, or like that's where something's missing. That he's like, so like my advice to you is like go just do a bunch of different things. Like he's like, work for a big winery, work for somewhere that's big, work for somewhere that's corporate, work for somewhere that's not, like work in this country, work in that country, like try a bunch of different grapes, different things. Like he's like, the more diverse your experience is, like the better winemaker you're going to be. Which that was really, really good for him to tell me too, because I like did that. So then in the spring, like next time around, I went and did harvest in New Zealand, which was awesome. I was down south, like South Island, in Central Otago. I had really liked working with Pinot and really wanted to like keep working with Pinot. I mean, like a lot of people do, but I sort of felt like I was like chasing Pinot Noir in a way, and liked those things about it. Like it objectively is a pretty like blank canvas where like where it comes from and what you do to it, it shows like more than other grapes do, I think. Like it can be really transparent that way. So I think like winemaking style and like region does like show a lot in Pinot that doesn't necessarily in other varietals as much. New Zealand was awesome. It was really weird. I was there in 20, so I was there when like everything shut down, but then the country reopened because it was an island. So it was like, okay, here's our 2 weeks. Great. Now we're like back to normal. That was a really cool, similar thing. Like it ended up being a really small harvest team because some people went back to like their respective countries, but like learned a lot. Honestly, that was where I probably learned the most and got the most experience forklifting. My boss there was a British guy who's absolutely hilarious. He's a wonderful human, but we did forklift training and everything. And I had like been on forklifts before, but like in Napa, it's not as common for like interns to forklift, like especially not barrels and stuff. And he was like, okay, so like your first big job is, he's like, you're going to rearrange the entire cellar so that you can like clean it. And then you're going to put everything back. And I was like, all right. And it's like a lot of barrels. Like they were big for Central Otago, which is not big by any means. It's like probably similar to the size of like Alexana here, but I like had never moved barrels before with a forklift. And he like literally looks at me and he goes, well, you know, it's actually going to really stress me out to watch you. So like, I'm just going to go and you're going to try to figure this out. And he was like, and what I'm going to remind you is, he's like, you know, people have been like throwing barrels off of ships for like, you know, hundreds of years. So like, if something falls, like, it'll probably be okay. And I was like, probably. And he's like, yeah, he's like, if you need anything, I guess, like, come to the office, but like, try to not need anything. And I was like, all right. Like rearrange the whole cellar. But I like learned by doing, you know, where it was like, that was like the best way to figure out. And he would like come by and like give me like tips and tricks for whatever, but I just like learned by doing it. And like spent a ton of time on a forklift. And then because we were like short staffed, during like harvest, our processing line, I like ran the crush pad by myself, like unloaded the trucks, weighed the fruit, loaded it into a hopper. The hopper then would like spin. I would like drive the forklift to the other side, pick out full bins, and like run in that circle all day long alone, which made it's like the fastest 12 hours of your life. It's super stressful, but it's like the fastest 12 hours ever. It's like I would blink and he'd be like, oh, like that's the end of the day. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, it's 7 p.m. And I was like, oh, cool. But that was really fun in a way, was to just like get so much like work repetition in, where I got like just comfortable with everything that I was doing, where it felt like there was nothing that someone could like hand me that I didn't know how to do. Monticello made bubbles too, but like they made bubbles. We got to like make a pet gnat, do like some fun things like that. We had like a little winemaking trial that like all of the interns got to like have their own little thing. I had ended up there because I had a friend from school that had been there the year before, which is how I had like heard of them. And she was like, Josh is the best. You should go work with him. You'll love him. And I like solely went just because I thought he would be fun to work with. And it ended up being great. That was at Akarua is the name of the winery. They've sold now. They're owned by like a French company. But Central Otago was really cool. Like it's a really tiny wine industry. Like it makes Oregon look big, which Oregon's not that big, but it makes Oregon look big in comparison. But it does have a lot of similarities where it's like, it is a community in like every sense of the word, because it like has to be, because it's little. And that was really cool to kind of like immediately be like adopted into, where, you know, we'd like go to whatever bar after work and it was like Josh and all his friends who were all like winemakers too, and the way that they just like hung out with you like a normal person, where like, not that Napa's not that way now, but like when I first started, it was like wine, I didn't associate with winemakers. It's not like that's who I was like hanging out with after work, right? Which also could have just been like an age thing, but that was a very different experience for me of like, oh, like we're all just making wine together. There isn't this like weird hierarchy that has to exist. Like this is just people coming together to like do something, which I think is a really important like lesson, and like something that has been sort of like foundational for me going forward in wine, is like that it doesn't matter like who you are, like where you've come from, or even like what your experience is. It's like we're all doing the same job and like doing this together. And yes, like somebody has to make a decision and somebody is quote unquote the boss, but like it's still, we're all still doing punch downs together every morning, you know, like so that was really cool. Came back, wanted to keep chasing Pinot, and ended up coming up to Oregon in the fall of 20, and did, which was a whole thing in itself, because we had both like, it was, I mean, still very much a pandemic here. Not that it wasn't in New Zealand, but it like sort of like happened and went, where it was really weird coming back to the US and being like, oh, this is like still a thing. Like, we're not done with this. What do you mean? But came back here and did harvest at Domaine Serene. And I had like some friends that had moved up to Oregon a couple years before, and I sort of had asked them like, okay, like where should I work? Where should I apply? And they gave me kind of like a whole list of like, okay, these are like places that are like either like reputable wineries that like make great wine, or like places that we've just heard are like fun to work with. Serene was the first interview that I did, and I canceled all of the other ones solely because I loved them. I interviewed with Ryan Harvey, who's now at DDO, and it was literally me and him on Zoom. I think I was probably the first person he had interviewed. It was super early in the year because I was in New Zealand, but trying to figure out where I was going to go next. And I think he even told me, he's like, I haven't even posted this as a job yet, but I guess I'll hire you. We haven't talked about Harvest or thought about it. I think he was either racking or getting ready for bottling. In his mind, Harvest was probably the furthest thing that he was thinking about. But I literally went through the interview with him. We did not talk about my resume at all. It was just me and him shooting the shit. And at the end, he was like, oh my God, I didn't even ask if you're forklift certified or anything about you. And he was like, but honestly, I don't really care. I want you to come and work here. And he was like, and I feel we would have a lot of fun. And that was also a really helpful thing that I sort of learned, that now that I've interviewed interns and put together intern teams, there's a lot to be said for just getting along with somebody. And you spend so much time at a winery during harvest. You do all year, but during harvest you do. That it's who is it that you want to be, it's hour 17 of your day and you've been looking at grapes all day long. Who do you want to be standing next to? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if somebody has been a winemaker for 30 years or never at all. It's who do you want to hang out with and have to hose down the crush pad at the end of the day, kind of a thing. Where that was really cool, and I really loved the way that that's sort of how Ryan saw it in a way. But I got along with him really well, and it was fun when I came up here. I feel he and his wife kind of ended up adopting me in a way. They were my first friends in Oregon. But that vintage was super, I mean, it was 2020, but it ended up being really fun. So it was at Serene, there's a house on the property that all the interns live in. So there were 8 or 9 of us that all lived in that house together. And then because of the pandemic, it was basically that was it. It was just us. I swear you could have made a reality show probably about those couple months. It was throwing that many people in a home together that also work together all day long. It's crazy. But it was so much fun. And I have really happy memories of just all of us losing power during the middle of the fires and walking around with headlamps or sitting down at the table with candles and just well, good morning, I guess. We're gonna go to work. We'll see what's gonna happen. Who knows? And just kind of how it was we ended up becoming close because there wasn't really another choice. It was kind of we've got to learn to figure out how to get along and make wine together, or we have no other option really. And it was super fun. Some of those, actually a lot of those people are still in Oregon. Most of them are not at Serene anymore. We've all kind of moved on to other projects and other things. But it's really fun whenever I see them. There's an instant familiarity where it's like old friends that you haven't seen in a long time, but the second you see them, it's you pick up right where you left off. Where there was a really, really fun culture, I think, during those years, that it was really cool to be a part of. Winemaking wise, I learned a ton from them. I mean, Serene's big, and it's a big winery, where that was a cool experience being somewhere bigger and making really high quality wine, but at that scale. They're Michael and Rachel, who were the winemakers at the time, both amazing human beings, but also really cool bosses. The way it's almost there was a unsaid expectation of what you were supposed to do. They expected hard work, and they expected you to do things right, and they had expectations, but they didn't ever explicitly say it. It was just kind of I'm gonna lead by example, and this is what you're supposed to do, but I don't have to micromanage you, or I don't have to say that to you. It's just sort of implied that you know that that's what I'm expecting. Rachel especially, that was my first time ever working with actually, Serene was my first time ever working with a woman in general. I had only like worked with men before then. So that was really cool having like a young female winemaker as boss. Sort of because, you know, it's like also being like young and a woman, I was like, I want to be like her when I grow up, which I tell her all the time. And she's like, what do you mean you're almost grown up? But she like amazing work ethic, but like her attention to detail and making wines is insane. But she's like a kind, wonderful, like human, but like an amazing winemaker and an amazing boss, which is like rare that you find someone that is like all the things. Like there's people that are great managers, but aren't necessarily like awesome people that you like want to go get a beer with, right? And then there's people that are like awesome people, but they're not necessarily great managers. Or there's like great winemakers, but aren't good managers. So it's like to this day, she's probably one of the few people I've ever worked with that like really is all three. And was just like, she worked unbelievably hard and was like, she's one of the most humble people that I've ever met. Like when we would do like the staff like presentation things sometimes, and they would call out certain people. She was like always in the back of a room and like never wanted anybody to acknowledge her. And I was like, what do you mean you make the wine here? Like you're literally the reason that this is happening. But she's awesome. And I would love to work with her again someday. And I hope that like works out. I don't know how that would work, but like maybe. But yeah, the rest of that team was like really formative for like what Oregon became for me, I think. I fully expected to like come and do harvest here and then like go somewhere else for the Southern Hemisphere and kind of like bop around and never come back. And then Serene was like, well, we like keep a couple interns to like go through racking and bottling, and we like bring you on like full time in the cellar. Like, do you want to do that? And I was like, well, I actually hadn't really thought about it. And like, I was going to go somewhere else, but like, yeah, I don't actually want to leave. Like, I really like you guys and I really like making wine here. And like, Oregon is amazing, and beautiful. And I feel like also because of fires and everything, like I didn't even really see Oregon yet. So I kind of feel like I should give it more of a chance. And it ended up like turning into like home in a way that I like didn't ever expect it to. I was with Serene until the summer and then came and got the enologist job here at Alexana in like the summer of 21. And even when I moved, it was like, I was so sad when I left Serene. I like felt so bad, and they were like, what do you mean? This is an amazing opportunity for you. Like, we're so proud of you. And I was like, I don't want to like not work with you guys every day. And they were like, go fly the nest. It's fine. Like, get out of here. Which is funny. And like similarly, like when I came here, I sort of expected to be here for like a year or two, but I did not expect to like stay forever. And now I like joke with Jeff Lewis and everybody that like I'm probably never gonna leave, because like this place has become like home. And like Alexana, when I first started, is really different than how Alexana is now. The company's changed a lot in the last couple of years, like in a really amazing way. When I started, we had a great foundation of people, and it was like a well-respected winery and like brand. And it was sort of like, we were sitting right at this like good, but not great like place, where it was like, there was nothing wrong with it. Like the wines were good. People were good. Like everything was good, but like, how do you become this, right? And we kind of just had like the timing worked where there was just like a shake of a lot of people moved on to different projects. And like Jeff moved up. He had been with the company before, but Jeff like moved up. Some other people came in, and we ended up with like this really cool core group of people that were like, okay, there's been a lot of change like really quickly. We're gonna like stay solid with each other, and we're gonna like give everything into this to like really make this okay. Because it was, I mean, like for a little bit, it was like, what is going on? Like our president left, the GM left, the winemaker left, like everybody who's been here for like 15 years. It's like, what is happening to this brand right now? And it was sort of just like a moment of like, everything is crazy. And you like look at the people that are left and you're like, okay, like we have to figure this out because we're like all that's left now. So like, we're gonna do this. And it was almost like an unspoken like agreement of like, we're gonna build this together and we're gonna like make this happen. Which is very much like how it's felt the last couple of years. I feel like my relationships with those people, which is like Tress and Jeff and I mean now Drew too, but like Marcella and people on the sales side of our company, like I feel like we really built Alexana into what it is now. And which like is a combination of like wines and wine quality and sales and like the way that all of that has been, but also like company culture where it's like, we've made this a really, really fun place to work. And I'm not just like saying that because I work here and I love it, but like it is a really, really fun place to work. Like I love coming to work every day and I like love all the people that I work with. And not that, and you know, I've had that at other places before. And I think because of that, I wanted to make sure that that was something that we were going to have again, because it's like, if you show up and like your coworkers are your friends and you guys like work well together, I mean, like that doesn't even feel like work anymore. And especially like the wine industry, like people don't go into wine to like make money. Like, I don't care who you are or what you say. Like, that's not, you know, like it's a labor of love in like every way. Like you have to love it or it's not worth it and it doesn't make sense. And I feel like all of us here like really love and believe in what we're doing. And that's been kind of like that shared like ethos in a way, is sort of like we've all been able to like grow and operate at a certain level because we all know that like we're like bought in. I don't want to say bought in but you know, like we're all dedicated to like making this the best that it can be. And like, I really believe in this place and like, I'm really, really proud of it. And it's not hard for me to like go out to people and like tell them how great of a place this is or how great the wines are or whatever, because it's not a lie. And it's not like I'm trying to convince somebody of whatever. It's like, no, it's just the truth. Like I work here every day. It's awesome. I love my coworkers. They're like my best friends. I believe in the wines and I think they're awesome. And like, for me, it's not hard to like put them in front of people and be like, yeah, the wines are great, because they are. And like Tress and I, that's been a huge part of it too, is like my relationship with him. And I've like learned a lot about winemaking from him, but also just like about life. And like, he's been like, I don't want to say a second dad because he hates when I call him dad, but I do call him dad like all the time. I jokingly at like one of our events, like pretty early on when Tress started working here, I was like, it's like what do you call it? Like a Freudian slip or whatever. I like called him dad in front of a bunch of people, just like on accident. And then I had one of the members be like, oh my God, it's so nice that you guys are a family business. And I was like, this is gonna be so funny if I just like roll with it. So then I was like, yeah, it's great. I was like, I really love getting to work with my dad every day. And now like that same, I mean, she's still a member here. So hopefully she doesn't see this and find out that I've been lying to her for like 2 years. But even when she'll see me, she's like, oh my God, how's your dad? And in my mind, it like takes me a minute to remember. I'm like, I mean, like, he's cool. He's like playing golf, like what? And I'm like, oh, Tress, he's great. He's great. And I like now, I mean, like I'll call him dad, just like, it's how I refer to him. Like, well, like this morning where I'm like downstairs making coffee and like talking to Andrew, and I was like, oh, is dad here? And he goes, yeah, he's upstairs. And it's just like, and Tress just like rolls his eyes, and I'm sure that he hates it. But I think that it's hilarious. But like in a lot of ways, he like has kind of been that. Like, I don't want to say he's been like a father, because I have a father who's wonderful and has definitely done the fatherly things of raising me. But like, you know, like we're driving into work and like one of my tires is flat, and like Tress will be like the first person to notice, and then he'll tell me, and then he'll help me like fill the tire. And then like he and I like traded cars because I needed to like use his truck for something, and when he like gave me my car back, he had like cleaned it and filled it with gas, which is like a total dad move and like a total dad thing to do, right? And it's just like the things that he's done over the years have very much been that way. And it's funny, like our like working dynamic is like, I learned a lot about how to, like in general with this company, but especially with Tress, like how to grow into like pockets. Like Tress is good at a lot of things, and he's an amazing winemaker. And I sort of had to like find the things that either like he wasn't good at or he didn't like to do, and like find what those pockets were and like fill the gaps, where it's almost like I feel like together we have made like a really, really cool winemaking like unit. And it's like the things that I'm not as good at, like Tress is really good at, and the things that he's not as good at, I think that I'm good at. And kind of like figuring out that like collaborative cohesion, which is like a big part of like how you build a team, right? And it's like how you fill in like, what are the things that I'm not good at? Like, okay, that's what I'm gonna look for in like this person that I'm hiring or these people that I wanna bring on. And I think like our relationship that like Tress and I have had has made the like working dynamic of this place really fun, because we like to spend time together, like, and we do spend a lot of time together. Like, I mean, he and I probably spend more time with each other than like anybody else in our lives, which I'm sure he hates and would love to see his girlfriend more than he sees me, but unfortunately I'm the one that he gets stuck with. But like we have become really, really close, and I like joke that like Tress is one of my best friends. But like it's true. I mean, like there's been a lot of like life things over the last couple of years that we've like, I've always sort of like had him in my corner for. And then sort of like where we're at now, right? Like I got promoted to assistant winemaker in the summer of 23. And kind of, we had been talking about it before then, but right around then it was like really more so than being the assistant winemaker of here. I was promoted to like assistant winemaker of the entire portfolio. So like the 3 wineries, because Jeff and I had like talked a lot just about the different brands. It was like I was going home to like see my parents in Napa, and people would be like, what, you're in Napa? Like, why don't you just go do whatever, help out at Revavana, because you're already there. And then it was like, our winemaking team from Argentina came up for harvest, and I'd be talking with them, and they're like, you speak Spanish and you get along with that, like why are we not sending you there? And it was kind of like yet another like happy accident, right, of just like a company that worked where I just like fit in all 3 of those places, and I like get along with the teams and like fit in the teams of the 3 places, but also just like super niche for me, that it like is like worlds that already I like existed in, you know, like I was really sad that I had to like leave Argentina in 2018, and like always wanted to go back and always like hoped that I'd be able to do that again. And now like I do, and that's part of my life and my job now, is I get to like work with the team at Corazon del Sol and like work with Luciano and Jose and like make amazing Malbec, and I get to like do that but not have to choose between like doing that and still like being here. And like my friends and my family are in the States, so like living in another country abroad forever is probably not something that they would love, and I wouldn't get to see them all that often. And like I got to build a life and like create a life and a career and like a world for myself in Oregon, like away from home and like my hometown and all of those things, and like be an adult and grow up and like do that here, but still not have to like give up home at the same time, and still get to like go back to like where my roots are. And like there's something about Napa Valley that's always going to be home for me and is always going to feel that way. And I mean I love my mom and dad, and I like get along with them very well, and like living far away from them is like hard, because I like to spend time with them. And all of my like really close friends are all in like Northern California, and like being far, not that it's that far, but like being far away, it's sort of like had gotten to a point in life where it was like I don't want to like be this far away like forever. You know, like they're all getting married and having babies and doing all those like fun things, but it's like, I don't want to like not be around for their kids. And like, I don't want to miss those things. But it like is nice that it worked out where I didn't actually have to like choose, which is rare because you usually do. You don't typically get to like, like have your cake and eat it too, right? Like you don't get to like have all the things, but I kind of feel like I did, or I do, because I get to like work with all three of the brands. And for me, it's like, it is like everything that I love about wine and like life in general, right? Like I'm working with across all of the brands. It's Cab Franc, Malbec, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Marsanne, Roussanne, Viognier, Grenache Blanc, Syrah, Mourvèdre, Grenache, Pinot, Chard, Sauv Blanc, Semillon. It's like the amount of grapes across it is crazy. And then it's like amazing vineyards all over the world. And it's really, really cool like winemakers that I get to talk to that have like really different philosophies on making wine and are really interesting people that like the way that they've done and created their careers is like amazing, right? And like those are the people that I get to interact with every day, and I like fit in all of their worlds, and I kind of get to just like exist in between. Yeah, which is crazy. That's a very long answer to like why wine, I guess, but that's sort of like why wine.
Second question.
Yeah.
Okay, that obviously covers a lot, and I appreciate the thoroughness with which you covered that. I'm curious about, let's talk about the work of winemaking a little bit. You mentioned kind of having that sort of that summer internship going into before you really started classwork. Tell me about your initial impressions of the work of making wine and what made you want to go back and do it again.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people, right? I was surprised by like, oh, this is farming, right? Like you think of wine, like I think everybody does when they like first think about it. You think of the wine industry as like this beautiful thing, and it's people sitting out with like a gorgeous view and they're like sipping glasses of wine, whatever. But when you actually go behind the scenes, like most of winemaking is like 90% cleaning. Like, let's be real. It's like, that's the whole thing, right? But I actually really liked that part of it. There's like a very methodical, like stepwise part of the process, right? Like it's like you think about it, you like create your plan. There's like your prep, clean up, setup. There's like the itty bitty window where you're actually doing the wine part. And then there's like the whole like clean up, shut down, like wrapping up a project. And it's very like start to finish that way. That like I really like. It's familiar in a lot of ways too. Like my dad, for instance, super handy, like does a million things, but I think of like the analogy a lot of like painting, right? Like when my dad would like paint a wall in our house, or we would like do something, like when I was little, I remember him like talking me through his process, and he was like, this job is mostly like set up and clean up. He's like, we're going to spend very little time actually painting the wall. It's like you lining it with tape. It's you like laying out your tarps on the floor. It's getting all of your things like set up to do the job. You do the job, and then it's like you cleaning it all up after. And there were a lot of like projects or just like things in life in my home that are like that way. And that's like how my parents are as people and like how they think about things. So it's like, was very familiar to have work be that way, which I really liked. I was definitely surprised by like just how dirty it is. I mean, like harvest especially, like you are sticky all the time, which I can't say that I like that. I mean, like who really likes that? But it is funny. It's nice, I guess, that I don't have to like wear a suit and tie to work every day. So I do appreciate that part of it too. But there's like something to be said about like no matter how far we advance in the wine industry and how like far technology comes and whatever, there's always going to be parts of it that are like working with your hands. You know, like it's wine, it's barrels, like you're gonna get dirty, like you're gonna have grapes and grape juice, you're gonna have, like, even when we're sampling, I mean, I get covered in wine when I'm sampling. I never don't. I try to not make a mess, but it just like always happens, right? I'll like finish a day of like sampling and tasting, and it's like my hands are like covered in whatever. I've probably used my sleeves to like wipe stuff up like everywhere. All of the clothes that I wear to work are like stained or not nice. I like can't wear nice things to this building because I'll just ruin them. But there's something really, really cool, I think, about getting to like work with your hands, and you like feel like you actually made something, as opposed to just like, you know, you, I guess, like type a formula into a spreadsheet. And I mean, not that I understand what coding is, but like it's different, where like for me there's something really like gratifying, I think, about actually like making the thing, and getting to work with it that way, which I guess sort of a continuation of that. Like the full cycle part of wine is so cool, that it's also, you make something that then you share with other people, and you get to like put a bottle of wine, like wine is like so much a part of like life and all of like big happy moments, right? Like I think about like birthdays and graduations, and even just like a normal like Wednesday night dinner, right? Like wine's usually part of that. Not always, but like it is, and it is in like a lot of moments. And it's like, that wine was made by somebody, and like that's a really cool thing to like think of, in the same way that you do with food, right? It's like there's nothing better than like the pasta that like your grandma made with like the sauce she's been making forever, that you have for like Sunday night dinner. And like everybody has like moments like that, right? Of like childhood, like some meal that somebody like always made for you, or like a smell or something that you associate with whatever kind of memory, right? It's cool thinking of like wine as also being part of that, because it very much is, where it's like, I mean, like I remember like the wines that we had for like my brother's wedding, or like when I graduated college, and like what we had or drank, or what people had. Like when I like got this job and I like went out to dinner with my parents, and like what bottle of wine we like took to dinner, or like those things are like, those are the wines that I remember more so than the like, you know, not that wasn't also like an amazing bottle of wine probably that I've had over the years, but it's more the ones that are like you're sharing with other people, and like the community part of it is like so cool. And it's so fun, like being a winemaker and being someone that's made wine now, is that like I can give bottles of wine or share bottles of wine with people that like I've made, which is like another touch point that's just like so cool to be able to do for somebody. That's been like really fun, and a cool like full circle part of, I guess, like the process to like really get to see it start to finish that way.
So I know you're still fairly new to Oregon, and your initial impressions of Oregon were at a very strange time in history. Tell me about you, as you started to see the Oregon industry, what your impressions were of both the wines being made here and the people making them.
Yeah, I think more so than like anywhere else that I've worked, which not that I've like worked all over the world, but just like, you know, Napa, Sonoma, Carneros, I mean, other parts of California, just like visiting other regions. Like Oregon, more than anywhere, is like absolutely a community of people. And it's like I've heard many people like say this quote, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like the way that, you know, like I'm gonna totally butcher what this is. Like one person does well and we all do well. Like it's something about ships in a harbor, like raising each other up.
The rising tide lifting all boats?
Yeah, there we go. Rising tide lifting all boats. That one, I've heard many times, but it is true. It's like incredibly indicative of the Oregon wine industry. And I don't really know like why it's that way. And I don't know why other regions aren't, but more so than like anywhere, like people genuinely like work together here. Like there is not a competitive, like cutthroat nature of like, I want to do well for me. It's like, no, like I want to do well, but that doesn't mean that you can't also do well, or that we can't do well together. And there's like so much collaboration and support between winemakers, but also like hospitality, vineyards, like every piece of the industry together, even like hospitality beyond just wine, like hotels, restaurants, like tourism in general here. It's like everyone is I think just kind of trying to show the world like how amazing Oregon is, which we can all say that all day long, but until people like come and experience it, they like don't get it. But when they do, they do. Like every single person that I've ever talked to that comes here is like, this place is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we're trying to tell you, is that it's amazing. And you just keep not believing it. You have to come and see it. But it's true. It's like, this place is amazing and so, so special. And like, I think the people that live here know that and are trying to like show the rest of the world that that's that way too. But it is really cool the way that like the community aspect of it exists. Like people, it's not fake, like people genuinely are friends and they really like love and care about each other and like want each other to do well. Like when people, you know, there's inevitably like people bounce around, they switch, they move jobs, they get better opportunities other places and want to move up or whatever. Like people aren't upset with each other over that. It's like the way, like I've seen a lot of people over the years like move on to a different job or a different place, and the way that people are just like so happy for them. Like no matter where you end up, it's like they just want you to do well. They want Oregon to do well. They want the Oregon wine industry to do well. Like somebody gets like a good score, they make a wine that's amazing, and like everyone is excited. And it's not like, oh, you did well, so that somehow says something about me. It's like, no, like people are genuinely really, really happy for each other. And like you've had a lot of like small brands that have like really started to come into their own. But I think like some of that success comes from that community aspect of it, right? Like that's why and how it works. Because there's people that like love and support and believe in you and are gonna like go the extra mile to like help make it happen. Whether that means it's like your friends that are gonna show up on like a late night and help you wax bottles because they're your friends and they love you and they're like, okay, we're gonna like make this work. Or like wineries that someone's equipment breaks, and wineries that like share equipment with each other and like make that work and make that happen. People that share like labor and resources. I mean, even like when I came in 20, which was like a crazy tumultuous time, right? The amount of winemakers that were like openly talking to each other about like, what does this mean? What are we gonna do? How do we make wine? What are you doing? What have you tried? Like, I don't think Oregon would have been able to do anything at all without that existing. And not that like 2020 is an amazing vintage, but like anything good that did come out of it, I think is because of that. And you know, it's like, there were a lot of people that like tried to reach out to like other regions in the world that had issues with fires or whatever. And that same community was harder or like didn't exist in the same way that it did here. That it was like, I think that also kind of bonded Oregon together in a really special way. That was like, we're all going through this together and we're gonna like come out of it together too. So like, this is how this is gonna go. I think like personally, like you know, like young 20s when I was coming here, which is like a weird time in life, right? Like no one knows what they're doing. And I was surrounded by a lot of people that like took me in. Like they didn't know anything about me. They didn't like know where I came from or really know me at all. And they still like kind of welcomed me with like open arms. And like really like everybody that I've met here has like genuinely just like been genuine and kind, like across the board. And like the friends that I've made and like people that I have met since I've been here, like isn't because I like did anything special. It was like all I had to do was like be present, right? And that's a really cool thing, that's how it should be, right? Like that's how human beings should be. But it's not the case like in the rest of the world, and it's not the case everywhere. But it is really cool, and it's really cool now. Like I like think about some of these people that I'm friends with, and like just how like special it is for like them to have done that, because they like made this like home for me too. Where it was like, I mean, I was young and like didn't know anybody when I moved here. I didn't know a single person when I moved here. where like I had come from a world where like I knew everybody because like I grew up in Napa, and like not that I know everyone, but like, you know, it's a small town. Like I feel like I knew everybody, or I knew everybody's like name or whatever. And it was like I lived with my mom and dad when I was doing vintage, and it was like I was very, very comfortable in that sense. And then coming here and being like an introverted, shy person and not knowing a soul was like, oh, this is maybe going to be an interesting life choice. Like I even had friends that were like, yeah, I mean, like you're going to go and do harvest and like come back. Like when I like told them I was staying, they were like, really? And they're like, you have like, no offense, but you have like 4 friends. Like you're not exactly like a social butterfly, you know, like how are you going to like build a life, right? Which is fair, because I also was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but like I'm going to give it a shot. And I guess like personally, I'm like really proud of like the life that I've built here, but I don't think that would have happened without like the Oregon community being what it is, because it wasn't like me, and it wasn't necessarily like just me or the way that I did things. It was like the amount of people that like took me in and like let me be parts of like their life and their world. That was like a huge part of it. And I think like that's something that makes Oregon incredibly special, but is like why it like the rest of the world will see it. I know they will. They're gonna figure it out. But it's going to like make all the difference. And I hope that it's something that like Oregon never loses, is that like sense of community, because it is really special. And like as I've like gone into other places and like talked with other people that have even just done a harvest here like 10 years ago, people still talk about that. And they talk about those parts of Oregon where it's like other people know. And I think like, you know, going forward and like going on to other regions, it's like, it's a big part of like what I want to try to bring and expand in other places that I like learned here, and that I like learned from the people here, is like how you have and like build that community. And it's something that like the entire wine industry really needs, I think, that I would love to see happen in like other parts of the world too. But I think it makes Oregon really special. And I think it's like, it's gonna happen at some point, that it's gonna be like the thing that makes this like the best place to make wine, because it is. And I mean, I guess I didn't even talk about winemaking, but like winemaking wise, like the amount of people here that like, it's a whole variety of experience. Like you have people that are incredibly like so smart, educated. They did all the schooling, all the things. They've worked a million harvests all over the world. And you have people that like grew up in Dundee and they've just like worked in cellars their whole life, right? And you have those people sitting on like a winemaker panel next to each other at like OPC every year. But I think that makes it really interesting, because there are so many different wines that come out of here. Like Alexana, for example, compared to like our neighbors down the street, it's not that far. It's a stone's throw away, like vineyard wise, but the wines could not be more different. And I think that's a really cool thing about Pinot Noir, but like about Oregon in general, is that it's not, we don't all have to do the same thing. And we don't all have to like, okay, this is the only way that we're gonna make wine and be successful. It's like, no, we can express and be different and still like work together and be a community and represent Oregon Pinot, but we can have different versions of like what that means. And I think like that diversity of like knowledge base is also like what makes it really interesting here, where you have all of these like different backgrounds that have like come together. I mean, even just within this building, you know, like I went to Davis for school, sure, but like Tress went to Oregon State, but that's a second career for him. Like he was in tech and did all kinds of stuff before his like life in wine. Jeff grew up in the South, well, if you can call Kansas City the South, but like, you know, he grew up in the South and like sort of made his way up into like being the GM here, and he's an amazing manager. But like, it's not like he, you know, did all this whatever corporate blah, blah, blah stuff and like has his MBA and then came over and now is running a winery. Like it's a very different world for him. And it came through like travel in Argentina and food and wine and sales and all the things, right? And then you have Drew, who grew up in, you know, also, I mean, Oklahoma, but like, you know, grew up in the middle of nowhere, like running around like a crazy kid with multiple brothers, and then like moved to Oregon because he was going to grow weed, and then ended up in wine, right? It's like, but all four of us work together every day, and it like works, and we make wine together and sell wine together and have like built this winery, right? And it's funny that like that's the case a lot of places. Like you'll put a bunch of people in a room and just like where everybody comes from is hilarious. But I think it makes it so fun. And there's like something about it that there's like something for everyone, right? Like there are, like if you're an academic and like that's the way you want to make wine and that's important to you, there's places here that are that way, and there's winemakers here that are that way, and you can find wines and find people and find a spot that you're going to fit and that's going to work. But if you're not, and if like you want to make wine based on like a feeling and a vibe, and you want to be in like a little shack and have 2 tanks, and that's, you know, you do it that way, there are also those wineries, and those exist. And both of those wines sit next to each other on shelves all the time. And that's really cool. I think that happens everywhere, right? But I think more so here, we have like an incredible variety of wines that come out of the Willamette Valley. And I think that's like really cool. And I think it's reflective of like the variety of people that are here, and like that kind of community that it all comes back to, I guess.
Well, I know we chose a momentous day for our interview today, so tell us about what's next for you.
Yeah, so I've been assistant winemaker for the portfolio for a couple years now, but recently, like literally 2 weeks ago, got promoted to winemaker of Revavana, so our sister winery that's in Napa. I'll still be around. And I'm going to make sure that I'm still around, because it would break my heart to not be. But I'll still be like around, and I think that sense of like community within our company is like a big part of why like this next step works and is going to happen. So I'll still bounce between like Oregon and Argentina, but like Napa is now going to be home again, which is cool. I think always in like my own mind, right, had like dreamed that I was going to be able to like make it back to Napa Valley and like be a winemaker there. And it's kind of funny, like I've had a lot of moments over the years, like being here in Oregon and like working at Alexana specifically, of like how am I ever going to leave? Because like I love these people and I love this place, and it's going to like, as much as I like love home and like that's home, and I know I want to end up there someday, like how am I going to do it? Because it's just going to like break my heart to do that. And like yet another happy accident. It's like I found the one way to do it that still feels like connected, you know, where it's like I'm still within this same company. Everybody that's here, I still get to interact with. Our company is interesting in that like operations are all here. So it's like Jeff, who's our GM, you know, he lives in Portland. His office is here. Like wine club for all 3 brands is run out of this building. Like CFO, HR, like everyone is here. Like satellite wise, it's like winemaking and your tasting room teams are really the only people that are like in each place. So I'll definitely get to interact with Oregon a lot. And I also think that's part of why it works, right? Is that it's like I kind of got brought up and like raised here, and like everybody here like knows and loves me, that it's like it works for me to leave, because like everything that like I've learned from them and that like we've built here, now I'm just going to take there. Not that it's not in Napa too, but it's harder. It's a satellite compared to like the brain of the company, right? That's here. Where I think that's why it's going to work in a lot of ways. I'm really excited about getting to go home. Revavana, I'm the only production employee. It's 4,000 cases. It's itty bitty. It's a little tiny perfect winery. But I'm really excited about that. I think there's like a lot of really cool changes that are going to be able to happen in a similar way to like how Alexana was when I started, where it was like we were good and then like we worked really hard to go from good to great. I feel like it's a very similar thing that I'm walking into, that it's like we're good. There's nothing wrong with it. Like the wines are good. Like we have a good reputation, like it's good vineyards, but it's like, how are we going to go from good to great, and what is going to make this like a world-class place to be? And I think that's also part of why it works, is because I think in a way I like did that and was like part of that here, that like they believe in me, or at least I say they, I hope that they believe in me and think that I can like help do that again, and like continue that momentum, which like I'm really excited about. And I think in general, like, I mean, I know like I'm young, it's not a secret, you know, it's not like I have been in wine for like 30 years, and it's not like I'm the most experienced person in the world, and I know that, but I do, like, when I set my mind to things, you know, like I do go at them like 110%, and it maybe takes me a minute to like decide that I'm gonna do something, but once I do, I like really do stick with it. Like I'm an incredibly like ambitious individual, which is I think how I've ended up here as quickly as I have, but it's like hasn't all been me. I've also gotten lucky with a lot of like really, really important people that have like helped sort of steer the direction that I've ended up. But like I care a lot about what we're doing, and I like really, really believe in it, and like I know that we can do it, and at the same time like everybody here believes in me in a way that's like really, really cool, and like very special that they do. But like I know that like they're all a phone call away, so like I don't actually have to like leave anybody really. And I get to now, like, rather than working with Tress every day as like his assistant winemaker, right, I get to work with him as a peer. And like I can still call him and ask him questions on the phone, which I'm absolutely going to do, and I'm probably going to annoy him and drive him crazy, but like I get to do that as a peer rather than like somebody that's working for him, you know. And same with like Luciano in Argentina. And it's really cool, like this company right now, like the three of us share a lot of like similar work ethic and belief in like what we're doing, that I think the portfolio is in a really, really cool place with like the different winemakers, and that I think that exchange between all of us and kind of like traveling between the brands, but also like making wine in all of the places is a really special thing that like this portfolio has, which I'm thankful that I don't have to lose. And my hope is to like take a lot of the things that I've like learned here, not just at Alexana, but like in Oregon and in Oregon wine, and like bring that to Napa, because I think we're missing that there. And I think Napa is at a really interesting, I know this is the Oregon Wine Archive, but I'll say it anyways.
Please.
I think Napa is at a really interesting, like, pivotal turning point, where it's kind of like we're right at that crossroads of like, what are we going to do next, and what are we going to be, and how is this going to work? I think there's a lot of people that are like leaving wine altogether. There's people that are starting to retire. There's younger people that are kind of like coming into management positions. There's a lot of this like sort of moving around and change that's all happening right now, that it'll be really cool to see like what Napa actually comes out of it as. That I'm excited to be part of that, because I think there is a lot of potential for us to like end up in a really, really cool place. I think Napa's been what it has been for a long time. Which isn't bad. I mean, it's amazing wines, and it's an amazing wine region, and like it's home. I love it. Like I'm not gonna say anything bad about it because I love it there and I'm going back. But like I would love for it to feel more like a community the way that here does, and I think that has to come from like the people, and I think that there is potential for that to happen there. Which I think is really special that I got to like experience and see that firsthand here in Oregon, and then I'm gonna get to like take that with me. I think in terms of winemaking too, you know, like Pinot's hard. Pinot's hard to work with. You guys were talking about your camera being a princess earlier, but like Pinot is a princess, you know, like she's a thin-skinned, delicate grape. You look at it wrong and everything goes to hell, right? It's like everything about it I think it's the hardest wine to make well, because it's completely transparent, right? It's like, it shows winemaking, it shows region, it like shows everything that you do. And if anything goes wrong, there's nowhere to hide, you know? In like bigger reds, you've got tannin, you've got power, you've got barrel, you can hide things if you want to, right? Like in Pinot, you can't. And when you try, it's obvious that you're hiding something, right? That I think there's some of that's like, I'm happy that I went this way, that I started harder and then like moving, because I think the other direction would be quite an abrupt change to try to figure out. But I think there's a lot of like winemaking things from, you know, like knowing when to like let the wine speak for itself and not need to give it power. I think there's a lot about like learning and knowing when to be gentle, but like when to be extractive. There's a lot of like parts of the process that I've learned in working with Pinot that I'm really excited to like apply and like use in Cab. And I think like Cab has potential to also be really pretty. I don't think that we think of it that way, but I think that it can be. That those are like things that I'm excited about just from having like worked with Pinot for so many years, that I'm really excited to like get to apply that with a different grape now and sort of see how that goes. It's going to be different, but that's okay. Tastings won't be, they'll be a little harder. There's a lot of tannin in there, but that's okay. But yeah, and I'll still get to like be around and be back, which is exciting. But yeah, it's weird. It like feels like a bookend, or like today feels very much like a bookend to like my time here in Oregon. And like, I was talking with Jeff just this morning, and even he was like, it's not like the end. He's like, this is just like the end of a chapter. And I was like, you're so cheesy. But okay, whatever you say. Which is funny. He's had a lot of like really cheesy lines lately. You can tell that he's a dad for sure. Because he's been using the like rose blooming line a lot, and I'm like, all right, let's settle down with that one, but yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's really exciting for you. I'm curious, you kind of talked about it in that last answer, but I'm curious, as you look at taking the jump from assistant winemaker to winemaker, what's the biggest thing for you that you're preparing yourself for, or biggest challenge you foresee?
I mean, in a similar way to how I just described making Pinot, like I have nowhere to hide now, right? Like, not that I've necessarily been hiding in my job, but like it's me, and it's like my decisions and my like reputation and my wines and my thing on the line. And like, especially like Revavana, like I don't have a team in terms of winemaking, right? So it is like just me. So if anything goes wrong, there's nobody that I can like be like, oh, so-and-so did that or something. You know, it's like, nah, I don't get to have that luxury. So I think that just like being, not that I'm not mindful now, but just being really, really mindful about decisions, and that like every decision really does matter, because there's nowhere for me to hide anymore. I think like, I've been making wine. I know how to make wine. I know that I do that. So I think also just like keeping my own like nerves in check a little bit, because it's a big responsibility jump. And I care about it a lot, and I don't want to mess it up. And I want to also, like for myself, but like for the brand, like I want to be successful. All of the like goals and expectations and things that like Jeff and Dr. Revavana and that like everybody have for like the wines, and for me, like I also want those things for like the wines and myself. So I think just like not getting nervous and like letting people believe in me and like know that it's going to be okay, and that like it'll all be good. And like knowing that I have an insane support system is like going to be huge, I think. Both like within the company and with mentors and whatever, but also like I'm going home. Like I can have Sunday dinner with my mom and dad, and if I'm like stressed out about work, like my dad can come help me fix a pump at the winery, and I know that he can do that. Like I can make my family friends come and wax bottles with me if I want them to, right? So it's like it's not like I'm walking into a world where like I don't have a support system. So I think like knowing when to utilize that too, and knowing like you don't exist in a bubble. Like the wine industry is a community for a reason. So yeah, but it's a big jump that's a little scary, but it'll be great.
Excellent. All the questions that I have for you. Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover that you wanted to cover today?
One thing that I didn't mention that I probably should is that my favorite coworker is actually my dog, that I feel like I should have mentioned, that he's also very important. He's not here right now today, but that's a very fun part of wine, I think, is that I get to have my dog run around with me every day. And he now has a beautiful life being a wine dog, which is, I think, his favorite thing.
And his name is?
Goose.
Goose.
Yeah. He's very silly, so the name is incredibly fitting. So I don't have 0 coworkers at Revavana. I do, in fact, have one. And he has settled in just fine. He's like, ooh, new winery, great. I love my life. And I'm like, I'm so happy for you. I guess like a story I didn't tell that's like sort of interesting, and maybe applies to like why wine is like, one of my dad's best friends who he knows through like the tennis world, lives out in like Coombsville in Napa. And when I was growing up, we used to have like a olive oil co-op, which is kind of a weird thing, but it was basically like him and all of his friends would get together like one weekend out of the year in like November, and we would all pick olives from like mostly his property, but a lot of the friends' properties too. We would like pick all these olives together. We would get together and like sort them, and then we would like rent out the mill in downtown St. Helena and go and like press olive oil. In the first year that they did it, I'm pretty sure, I hope I'm not quoting it wrong, but was 97, which was the year I was born. And I was like in a baby Bjorn on like my mom's back, and she's like there's pictures of her like picking olives, and there's like a baby on her. And then like my entire childhood, it was like we would do it every single year. It was like we had the olive harvest, and then we would do like a big party like the day that we pressed all of the olives, which was like, that was almost, I didn't think about it at the time, and I didn't think about that as like a job or whatever, but I've been thinking about it a lot now, like in relation to Oregon, but just in relation to like life and like my story and whatever, and like that being another example of just like community and like people coming together to like make something. And it was funny, it was just like the most like ragtag group of people, right? You know, like Steve, who's my dad's friend, it was him and his wife Lee that would like do it every year, and it was like all their friends from all over. Like you had like a finance bro from San Francisco, but you also had like Steve's mom like taking pictures with her camera. And it was like, when I was little, I was either like in trees, like as high up as I could go, because they were like, you're small and you're like light, here, go up there and like pick those, right? I was either there or I was running around like with all of the dogs, because everybody brought their dog to the olive. There were like 30 dogs like running around the property. It's crazy. In their house, they actually have these like really beautiful like tiles that has like the face of all of these dogs that like were part of that community in a way, like growing up, right? But even the way like we would come together, and some of those memories I have of childhood of like, we would line up tables and put like 2x4s and then a tarp to basically make like a sorting line, right? And we would like sit in chairs and like sort the olives through and like pick everything out. It was just like everybody who had like a pickup truck, and we had like 1/4-ton bins in the back. And it was a lot of just like tarps underneath trees, and we'd rake olives off and then like dump them back into the bins. And it was a very like simple way of making it. Like it wasn't like rocket science, but it was really fun. And just like the sheer amount of like difference of people that were around. And a lot of my parents' friends like didn't actually have kids. So we were like me, my brother, and there was maybe like 1 or 2 other families. We were the only kids around. It was mostly like adults, right? And that like community of coming together to make something, I think about a lot now. And I think about a lot now, and like, not that I don't have coworkers and not that I can't like make things at Revavana, but like the idea that like I can kind of do that again, where it's like I could bring together like a bunch of people to like when I have to wax bottles in the summer, right? And I could like bring people together that way to do that rather than like hiring labor or something. And almost like Revavana being like the size and small enough where like I'm almost in a position to like build that the way that like Steve and Lee did with like their friends and us growing up, which is cool. And just like I was gonna bring that up at some point, it just never came up, but that just being like a funny thing, that was my like first, I guess, like production related experience, was making olive oil. I think my dad actually like designed the labels that are on like the olive oil bottles and stuff, which is funny. We didn't wax those. We did hand label them though. And I remember a couple of days of like doing that and just getting covered in glue and stuff. But yeah, which is funny. They still live in Napa, and they've actually been here. They came up and visited Alexana like a year ago. And I think they, like Steve especially, you know, I think he's excited that like I learned all of those things from them and that I'm gonna hopefully continue building that, I think is everybody's like hope, which is cool.
Yes, a strong first internship.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was unpaid for sure, but that's okay. We usually had like donuts. So I did eat a lot of like donut holes as a kid, which like, you know, sugar and stuff when you're like 10, it was like, oh, this is the best. So, like we get to go pick up the donuts from Buttercream in the morning. And my parents lived downtown, so we always like were the ones that brought the donuts. So like by the time we got there in the morning, everybody was like waiting for donuts and coffee. So we got to be like the nice stewards of like, we brought gifts for you, which was funny. My parents have like one olive tree in their front yard. They used to like on the back of the bottle, they would write everybody who's like olive trees had made it, and I think they called it like Ballantine bag full, because I think it was literally a Ziploc bag of olives was like all that we contributed, but they still let us be on the label, which I thought was very cute. Yeah, strong first internship though. I should put that on my resume, probably should make sure that's on there. Can list Steve Stefanke as a reference. He would talk someone's ear off for like hours probably, which would not be great, but.
Harvesting since birth or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, I can see that on a resume. That's awesome.
I should make him find those pictures of me being like a baby during those harvests. That would be funny. I've seen them before. I don't know what happened to them, but I know they exist somewhere.
Thank you so much. Taking
Yeah.
the time sharing your story with us. Congratulations on your next challenge here, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you guys.
We'll go ahead and let you
This was awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
For us too. Thank you.